Okay, in a previous video, we looked at how we can set password and account lockout policies in group policy. The downside of that is that typically applies to the entire domain, so it doesn't give us fine-grained control over password policies. Instead, everybody gets the same password policy. Well, there is a way we can change that using password settings objects. So let's take a look at how that would work. So I'm going to go to Tools and Active Directory Administrative Center. And then I'm going to navigate. Actually, before I do this, I'm going to create a group and a user. So I'm going to go to my Bassett.local. I'm going to go right click out in the middle here, and I am going to create a new organizational unit. And being very, very creative at the moment, I'm going to call my organizational unit Company. I don't really care about the rest of it, so I'm just going to click OK. Company is the only thing I actually need to set. Notice that it is checked to prevent from accidental deletion. So I'm going to click OK, and that gives me an organizational unit named Company. Now I'm going to go into Company, and inside Company, I'm going to right-click and create a new user. And again, I'm feeling very creative, so I'm going to call him Peter Smith. And his logon name, we're going to do P. Smith. And I'm going to go ahead and set his password. Okay, and the rest of this I'm not going to worry about at the moment. We have talked about creating users in other videos, and you can scroll down here and see the rest of these. You can also do the same thing, by the way, in Active Directory users and computers. I just did it in ADAC because that's where I need to be for the password settings objects. Now, I have a user. I'm going to go ahead and create a group as well. So I'm going to do a new group, and we're going to call this IT staff. Let's do staff instead of users. IT staff. And this is going to be a global group, so it's going to be to aggregate users. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to add a member here, and I'm going to add Peter Smith. Do a check name, make sure it finds it. It does. Click OK. So I have a new group called IT Staff with a user for Peter Smith. All right, you're going to see why I did that here in a minute. So let's get back to our password settings objects. So I'm going to go to my Bassett system, and I'm going to find password settings container. Now, the idea of password settings objects is that they allow us to have more fine-grained control of our password policies. So for my IT staff, which is going to have more permissions, I might want a different password policy than for my general staff who aren't going to have the same level of permissions on their accounts. That's a case or an instance of where I might want to use a password settings object and have different policies. Now, key thing to remember here, I set password settings objects and I apply them to specific groups. If a user is not a part of a group, they get the default domain policies, right? So in this scenario, I use my domain policies in Group Policy Management, like we talked about in a previous video, to set my permissions for everyone. And now here, I'm going to set a higher level of permissions for my IT staff. So I'm going to right click and do new password settings. Alternatively, by the way, I could come up here and do new password settings. Either one takes me to the same thing. So I'm going to set a name, and this is going to be the IT staff password policy. Now, the other kicker here is precedence. What precedence does, is if I have a user, now remember these password settings are going to be applied to groups. So if I have a user that is part of more than one group, which policy takes effect? And this is where I set precedence, and lower number wins. So if I set a precedence of 1, and Peter Smith is part of that group, he gets this policy. If he's part of another group that has a different policy, this policy will take precedence because it's 1 and lower number wins. Let's say the other one was 10. 1 is lower than 10, so this one is applied. So I'm going to go ahead and set my precedence to 1 because I really want this to take effect. All right, and here are my options. Now, this right here is basically from my account policies, and this is from my lockout policies. So I want to set a minimum 10 character password, and I want to remember 36. So can't recycle for 36 policies. Minimum password age. Now this here is part of that account policy. This is my lockout policy. I showed you too much first. Minimum password age, I'm going to set it to be 2 days. And maximum password age, I want them to change every 3 weeks. So I'm going to do every 21 days. By the way, you saw a flash up there. Let me go to 2. That's a warning indicator. I can't set this at 2 days. So it's telling me the values that I can set and what is recommended. I can't set this at 2 because this one was at 2. So if I set this one at 1, and now it's hiding some of this from me. And then let me see if I can set this one. Oh, this thing's confused at the moment. Let me cancel this, and I'm going to go back in and redo it without flipping it back and forth and confusing it. IT staff password policy. We're going to do 10 characters. We're going to remember 36. We're going to do 21 days. Notice this time it would let me do 2 because it didn't create that conflict. We're going to set this one at 2, and then I can enforce an account lockout policy or choose not to. By the way, I can uncheck any of these that I want to as well. So I'm going to enforce my account lockout policy after 2 failed attempts. We're going to reset it after 45 minutes and until the administrator unlocks it. All right, now that's my policy. Oops, forgot to set my precedence. Anything, by the way, with an asterisk here means this is a required value. All right, I can set a description here if I want to, and then down here, I define who this applies to. So I'm going to add my IT staff group, and I'm going to check name and click OK. And now anybody in my IT staff group is going to have this particular policy applied to them. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and save my policy, and we now have a password policy for our IT staff.